Hello, how are you?
I'm great. It's so nice to see you again.
Good to see you too. Say we'll have a lot of people that will just all kind of come in right around. We usually start, Lorraine, just at a couple minutes past the hour.
Yeah, no
Um,
worries.
so we'll be good.
Great. How many people signed up?
You know, the funny thing is we actually can't tell behind the scenes. So
Okay.
because it's in a completely different inbox, so we can't
Um,
actually see. We can kind of see accepteds.
yeah.
So there were around like 75. But then we also posted it on our Teams page. So if somebody didn't accept it there, they can click in there. So there's always a little bit of mystery slash mystique behind it.
Okay. Nice. Nice.
So
And yeah, I haven't met the rest of your team yet. Hi, I'm Lorraine.
Hi, Lorraine. Tara Pierce. I'm the president of the Women's Council, and I'm just excited. I'm really excited to have you here today. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm a newsletter subscriber, so I'm excited to see you speak
Oh,
in person.
thank you. Thanks for subscribing.
Yeah.
yes, and I popped everything in. So Lorraine, just I'm gonna quick say hello, and then I'll
Yeah,
turn it over to Tara, and then I'll turn it. I'll actually read your bio, send it on to you.
great.
Fabulous. Super excited. Good morning, Lauren, Lisa, Belinda. Thanks for being intentional and joining today. Lorna's on the call. Hooray.
Hi, Angie.
Hello, hello. Good morning
Good morning,
slash
everyone.
afternoon for some on the East Coast. Hello, keep on coming into the room. Excited to see the little circles, even if we're not seeing faces right now. Welcome.
It's always exciting to see how many people show up on a Monday, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
starting the
It's,
week off right.
yeah, yeah. I think it's a great day for a virtual presentation. I really do.
Hmm.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, there's somebody in. All right, that is Karen and Lorraine, so I will do that. Good deal. Welcome, everybody. Looks like we have a lot more people joining, coming on in the room. Happy Monday. It's the middle of the month, almost past the middle of the month, which is kind of scary. Time has certainly flown. We're getting close to the first day of spring. And for those of you that are in Minnesota, it's not going to feel like spring this weekend. It's back in the 30s. But other places, it's lovely. So come on
Angie, do
in.
you consider the first day of spring the 20th or the 21st?
21st usually.
Oh, see, that's the first full day of spring. The
Yes.
20th is the first day of spring, and the 21st is the first full day of spring, which I only know because it's my mother's birthday is the 20th.
Well, and
So,
my sister's is on the 21st. So that's
yeah.
where we'll argue, right?
Okay.
Oh.
But
All
either
right, it
way,
is noon. We're going to give it just a couple more minutes as people are starting or continuing to join. So come on into the virtual classroom. We're super excited to have you all join today. Thank you for taking some intentional time to learn more. And I'm so excited about the guest speaker that we have today. She is phenomenal. You will be impressed. So we'll give it just another minute and then we will get the introductions rocking and rolling. Fantastic. If you noticed, I did put a few things in the chat as well. So you can connect with Lorraine on LinkedIn. She has got some really cool, just kind of bite-sized nano tips, 3 minutes or less, click on that. You can subscribe there. You can watch some of her free courses on LinkedIn Learning. That's where I found her first. And then she reached out. So some really great courses there. And then she's also got a feedback form, and she'll probably talk a little bit about that. But being that it is now 1 minute past the hour, let's get started. Tara, kick it off.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone, and welcome Lorena Lee for this day. I'm the president of the Women's Council for this year for 2024, and I am thrilled to be serving as your president this year. Couple of quick reminders before we get started. We have mentorship applications are currently open, and they'll be open through the end of the month, but I really encourage you, if you're interested in being either a mentor or a mentee, sign up now. You can find the information on Teams. You can absolutely reach out to me or any member of the Women's Council, and we will point you in the right direction. And quick reminder that the mentoring program is open to everyone in Coloplast, men, women, everybody. Go and West River Road and field-based. We'd love to have you all. And then also soon, later this week, we will be sending out a survey for the Women's Council. We would really appreciate your feedback in that. That helps us provide courses and programs that are important to you, that are important to Coloplast, and that to help us grow as a team. So thank you. I'm super excited for our speaker today. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Angie.
Wonderful. Well, I get to share a little bit about Lorraine. So she is a global keynote speaker and instructor for Stanford Continuing Studies and LinkedIn Learning. She works with Fortune 100 organizations, global teams, and individuals to teach them how to supercharge their professional presence. Lorraine is recognized as a LinkedIn top voice and has more than 300,000 LinkedIn followers and 10 years of experience leading editorial teams at top tech firms. She was recently named a top virtual speaker by Read Write and a top 15 LinkedIn expert in San Francisco by Influence Digest. She is a founding editor at Prezi, SlideShare, and LinkedIn, and has been featured in publications including Inc., Read Write, and Entrepreneur. So welcome, Lorraine Lee. We'll let you rock and roll.
Thank you so much, Tara and Angie. I'm so excited to be here with all of you. So I'm going to kick off our session today with 2 questions. So the first, when you think about communicating on video, what word or emoji comes to mind? So it can be something positive, it could be something negative. Because whatever you're feeling, confident, unsure, tired, disconnected, any word or emoji, drop that into the chat. That's question number 1. Second question, what is your goal, or what do you hope to learn in the session today? So what brought you here today? And as you think through these responses, I'm going to share more about what we'll cover today. So today we're going to talk about how video doesn't need to be a cause for fatigue and burnout. And instead, I'm going to help you learn how to turn video into your new best friend. And I personally get so excited talking about communicating on video, because for many of us, it's really our main way of communicating. And if it's not our main way, it's definitely still a big part of something we do regularly. So it's really important that we learn how to harness the skill. Based on my own experience, it can really be a skill that can differentiate you from the many faces out there, the sea of faces that we see on video calls often. So that's what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to turn over to the chat now. Tiffany says detached.
Come on, you guys. Let's type some in the chat.
It can be an emoji too. Don't have to come up with a word. And then also I want to hear about your goals. So, there's 47 of you here right now, and the number is growing. So what brought you here today? What are you hoping to learn? What are you hoping to take away? Engaged, not distracted. Angie, looking forward to learning skills from an expert. Thank you, Angie. Tiffany, goals to just have some tricks to make it more personal. Nice. We will definitely be covering that.
Inspiration.
Looking for inspiration. Okay. I do think you'll be inspired. You can let me know at the end. Interpersonal skills, Elizabeth feels disconnected on video. That's very common. Learning more productive options for video presentations. We will definitely cover that. Crystal wants to make sure your message is well understood. We will definitely cover that. All right, so a lot of it is around engagement. Okay, amazing. Well, we will be covering all of this and more. So thank you for sharing in the chat. So as I mentioned before, we're going to be covering a lot in today's session. So we'll be discussing 3 main categories over the next 40 minutes or so. So we're going to talk about how you can come across more confident and competent on video. We're going to talk about how to keep your audience engaged with your virtual presentations and content. And then I will share some of my favorite best practices for connecting with and presenting to your virtual audience. But before I dive into that, I just want to share a little bit more about who I am and why I am here talking about video in particular. So as Angie mentioned, I'm Lorraine. I love helping teams and organizations stand out and supercharge their professional presence. Now, when I use the word presence, I mean it in both senses of the word. So how others see you, how others perceive you is of course very important, but also where they see you. So things like, are you in the right meetings? Are you in the right video calls? Are you being seen on LinkedIn? So presence encompasses all of those things. And of course, video presence is really at the intersection of those 2 things. I was named a top virtual speaker. I have spoken about video communications to everyone from Fortune 100 companies to universities to startups. Before that, I was the head of editorial at Prezi, which is a presentation platform. I am also, as Angie mentioned, a LinkedIn learning instructor, and I was a founding editor at LinkedIn for 6 years, where I helped launch LinkedIn's first ever video product way back when. So I encourage you all to please connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to take screenshots at any point during this session, post it on socials. You can tag me, tag Coloplast, tag Angie, Tara, and we can keep the conversation going even after we have to say bye today. So first things first, I want us to acknowledge the reality of our day-to-day. So we have so many priorities and distractions in today's world that are making it really hard to grab and keep people's attention. And it really isn't much of a surprise when we see things like this on a daily basis, right? The before. Your audience's world is really noisy. We are getting constantly bombarded with messages and content. And then we get on calls where we have to sit through bad presentations or just poor quality video calls. And video fatigue might sound like the reason for all of this, but I really think it's more about a combination of poor video presence, uninspired content, and unfortunately bad meetings. Now, how many of us are streaming or binging a TV show right now? So you can raise your hand or let me know in the chat. Are you watching video? Tiffany's raising her hand. I just finished binging Succession. I know I'm late to the game, but I watch a lot of TV. So curious how much video you're all engaged with on a daily basis. Are you watching video, whether it's YouTube, any of the streaming channels? I'm seeing some hands up. Yep. So video is in our daily lives, right? We love video. And you can see here, all of us are watching video in some way. I know, again, I said I watch a lot of TV, so I'm consuming a lot of video. So video fatigue isn't really the issue. We're just bored on video calls because our video communications aren't as captivating as what we're used to seeing on video. So we really can't settle for the status quo anymore. So for us to use video well, we need to really be thinking about it more as an experience where we are putting a concerted effort into our calls and virtual presentations. So how do we do this exactly? So this is leading us into the first section of my presentation where I'm going to talk about 3 ways to boost your confidence and competence on video. And these are really going to be the essentials you need to set up before you get on a call. So one of the best ways to communicate on video is by making sure your foundations are set up. So this is going to help you appear more confident and just feel more confident too, knowing you have the right setup. And then subsequently, when you appear more confident, people view you as more competent and know that you are making a good impression on camera. So believe it or not, your confidence and competence can really be greatly impacted by lighting. And lighting is good news, very easy to fix, but it's often an afterthought. So I want us to see this in action here. So if I were to get on a video call with you looking like this, what would be your thoughts about me and how credible and professional I was? Like, let's say I joined this webinar and I'm talking in darkness like this. What is your impression of me? So let me know in the chat what comes to mind when you see me like this. Tara says I look tired. Okay, a few people saying I look tired. Yeah, Angie doesn't care. Thomas, no attention to important details. Not professional. Thank you, Lorna. So these are all negative things. Yeah, air in the darkness is distracting, sets a dreary mood. Exactly. So none of what you all said was anything positive, right? So when we look like this, it's distracting, it's unclear, you don't have a great impression of me. I know when I see myself with bad lighting, now that I know what good lighting looks like, I really don't feel good about how I'm appearing. I'm very self-conscious about it. However, when you have good lighting, it makes you look more put together, you're brighter, you just look more professional overall, right? So I recommend getting ring lights, ideally at least 12 inches to 16 inches in diameter, so you're getting enough light. Or you might try a softbox, that's this one here, what you see in photo studios, or you might choose LED lights. So whatever option you choose, I just want you to make sure that you are choosing an option that has multi-color options. So depending on makeup, time of day, the clothes you're wearing, you'll be able to cycle through those different colors and figure out the lighting that works best for you in that moment. Now, for those of you who are lucky enough to have windows in your workspace, I'm in a den right now, so no natural light, but if you are lucky enough to have windows nearby, natural light is going to be the best option, and it's free, which is even better. So you should ideally have the window in front of you. You're going to want the light shining in directly on your face. Now, whether you use a window, whether you're using those other lighting options I mentioned, just remember that you do not want it coming from behind you. So if you have a window behind you, if you have lighting behind you, it's going to make you look like backlit, like you're in witness protection or something like that. So that's definitely not the impression we want on video call. So always have the lighting coming in the front and make sure that you have enough lighting to begin with. So once you have lighting set up, I want you to start thinking about your virtual environment. Having a well thought out, curated environment is going to give a much more professional look and feel to your video meetings and presentations. And similar to lighting, if you look more professional, again, we're going to feel more confident with how we're coming off. We know we're making that great impression. So do you have a messy room like this? If so, no big deal. I actually don't care if your room is messy at all, as long as, caveat, the space behind you that shows up on camera looks curated. So before I moved into this apartment, so it was actually 2 apartments ago, I was in a studio and it was very small. And I only had this one spot, as during COVID, one spot where I could put my desk. And my bed was unfortunately in my background. And I always felt super self-conscious and weird about it, just having my bed in the background. And now spacing issues like these, they can't always be helped, but there are hacks you can do to kind of fix those situations a bit. So a room divider would have been a good idea for me at that time to at least, create that separation. I had a coworker who took calls right in front of his pantry, and he had a nice red curtain behind him. So there's little tips and tricks that you can do to at least give the illusion of a proper workspace. And again, we really only need these 6 feet behind us looking good. Everything else can be messy. My room's a little bit messy right now, but I know behind me, I'm making sure that I am creating that really great professional impression for my video calls. So my recommendation, if you're starting off figuring out, okay, where do I get started when it comes to curating my background? Simpler is better. So here's an example by Ted. This is like one of my favorite setups. It's very simple, but it was just so warm and personable. So she had tons of natural light coming in. She only has 2 plants behind her, and it's a white wall, right? So it's kind of plain, but you have the color of the plants popping on the background. And again, the natural light just made her look really professional. It's just a clean background and also very personable and warm with the plants, right? So great setup here. It can be really simple. Now, the one thing I want you all to avoid when possible is blurred backgrounds or virtual backgrounds, unless you have a green screen behind you. And this is because when we are on video, our brains are already working overtime to kind of reconcile, okay, I'm talking to this person, I need to interpret their facial gestures. It's a little bit off from our in-person interactions, right? So I have to work harder to kind of assess what's going on in front of me. Now, when you add a virtual background or a blurred background, it's just that added element of, okay, you're reminding me this is not reality. I'm now having to work extra hard to put the 2 things together. And virtual backgrounds too, unless you have the green screen, they're kind of crazy, right? So like you'll move your hand and then something will pop out in the background, or like half your head will disappear all of a sudden. So to the other person, it's just like, oh my gosh, what is happening? So you want to make it as simple as possible, as grounded in reality as possible. And again, there are reasons sometimes where we need to have those backgrounds up, I understand, but if you can, try to keep it as grounded in reality and to curate your physical background presence. So I'm curious for you, I'll just check out my background really quickly. What stands out to you? Does something pop out to you? No right answer here. I'm just curious kind of what you see, what kind of catches your eye when you look behind me. Nice. So Maja, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but correct me if I'm wrong. Books, plants, wedding photo and plants and books, clean and organized. Thank you. Plants equals happy. Yes, exactly, Becky. Yeah, very personable, worn clean, blank wall, white walls, bright plants and pots. Yeah, all great observations. So this is just a little bonus tip for you all, is adding something in your background is a really great way to connect with other people and to give people conversation starters on a call. So I'm not going to talk about it here today, but I often talk about autopilot and how we're often so on autopilot. It's just, how are you today? You know, just typical conversation. So when you can add a bunch of things in your background, like I've had people just comment on my background generally, like, wow, it looks nice, or like, wow, you have a lot of plants, or do you like plants? A lot of people point to this caricature of me and my husband. We got married last year, so that's always a nice conversation starter. So anytime you can add something personal, the books, right? These are all books that have some sort of special meaning to me, they're gifted to me, or maybe I know the writers. These books, I was, I have interviewed for them. I have like my Muay Thai gloves. So a lot of different things. You can make it as personal as you want, but I just encourage you all to try to add that personal touch if you can. Right, so we just talked a lot about backgrounds, or physical backgrounds, but I actually called this section Curating Your Environment for a reason. And that's because it's not just about the background anymore. So we are seeing so many advances in tech and how people are up-leveling their video calls. So curating your environment is a bit more accurate and really is going to be the thing that helps you stand out. So pretend we're on a video call here. This person has a nice background and a really nice foreground as well with the content on screen. There's a lot of companies now that are offering this sort of functionality. There are tools like Warmly, like I'm using Prezi Video, for example. So a lot of different kind of add-ons and apps that you can use to get the content on screen to really make it stand out. And you don't have to have as elaborate a presentation as me, but just having even your name, a little name tag, maybe the Coloplast logo when you're getting on calls, can really go a long way in making people think, wow, this person really has it put together. And again, this is really valuable real estate, right? We don't have that much space to work with to really make that strong impression, to communicate impactfully. So I want to make sure you're taking advantage of all these different touch points that we have. So now that you have some inspiration around the background and the environment, what is one thing that you think that you could add to your background after the call today? What's a personal touch or something you might change? Maybe you'll change positions and get in front of a window. What is one thing you might change when it comes to your setup? Let me know in the chats. Hey, Jancy wants to have a simpler background, a plant. Woo, Thomas, yeah, that's great. Lorna's going to remove her virtual background, name and foreground for Warren, no blur. Nice, Elizabeth. Tara just turned her blurred background off. She's making changes right away. That's amazing. Yeah, Tiffany left her door open and you would close that door. That's great. There's kind of a weird psychological thing with doors where people, when they see them, just think someone's like going to pop through. So yeah, if you can actually even try to not have the door showing, that would be even more ideal. I had a client who just put this tall plant kind of more in the foreground and it covered the door. So I thought that was a really cool adjustment. Great, so it looks like simple background, adding some plants. These are all great adjustments. All right, well, next up, I want to talk about our third and last tip for this section, which is our framing. So let me know in the chat, which most closely resembles your current framing? Are you A, B, or C? Maja is gonna turn off the blur even with a small apartment, you can make it work. All right, let's see. We have a bunch of A's and C's. Huh, no B's, interesting. Okay, one D by Charles. Okay, interesting. I've never seen that before where it's so consistent across the team. All right, amazing. So a lot of you are A or C. So, this is what I often see when people are on video. So it's a little bit up close and personal, right? And it's wonderful that videos are on, but this is a bit too close and frankly can be a little bit uncomfortable to the other side. And so fascinating. There's actually a scientific reason for this. So people skills expert Vanessa Van Edwards says that this is because when you are this close to the camera, it replicates that feeling that we get when someone is in our personal space in person, right? When someone like stands too close to us in line, we're like, ooh, just, I need a little bit of space. So when we're like this on camera, it's that same feeling. So our brain's reaction is to think that this person could possibly harm us. It activates our amygdala, which processes fear. And of course, it's not a feeling we want to be giving others on a video call, right? Now, being this close is also difficult because when we're talking, if all you're seeing is just a ginormous head and there's just like nothing else to look at, it's just really hard to stay engaged. It's a little bit overwhelming just having my ginormous head here. So how are we going to change this? Your video should ideally show your shoulders and a bit of your torso, and you want a little bit of space above the top of your head, so about 3 fingers worth. So this was actually the top of the camera here, but my actual camera, three fingers worth of space is the right amount. Now, when you do this, as someone I saw mentioned in the chat, you're no longer just that floating head. The person on the other side of the video feels like it's a little bit more like an in-person conversation, right? It's a little bit more natural when you can see my hand gestures and my body movement and all that versus just my head up close. So I want to do a quick group activity together. I see Tiffany making adjustments in real time. Excellent. A group activity together to check whether we have the right distance from the camera. So everyone, please, if you feel comfortable, turn on your cameras and stick out your arm. So we'll want about an arm's length of distance between yourself and your camera. So if you have less than an arm's length of distance, likely too close. If you have more than an arm's length of distance, likely too far away. So you want about an arm's length, so make adjustments, pull it closer or push it farther away. And then again, you want to make sure you're showing some of your torso, and you only want about 3 fingers worth of space above your head. So if you can, grab a laptop stand, delivery boxes, anything around the house to prop up the camera. So I'm going to do a quick just survey of whose videos are on. Is always my secret way to get everyone to turn on their camera. So Tara, you're looking pretty good. I think you can have a little bit less space above you. Linda, same feedback. You probably want to push maybe back a little bit because you're actually, it's coming at you like forward, looking at you straight on, which is great, but you want a little bit less space above. Belinda, walking treadmill, love it. Probably would need to lower your camera a little bit, just so it's a little bit more straight on. Thomas, you look pretty good. Becky, I can tell it's a little bit, the camera's a little bit from up above looking down on you, so you want a little bit more straight on. Lorna, you look pretty good. Angie, pretty good. You can probably get a little bit less space above your head. And Tiffany, you look pretty good in terms of space above your head, but you're going to want to lift your camera up a little bit more because I can just tell from the background that the perspective is not straight on just because I can see it's like kind of angled upward. All right, I think I caught everyone whose camera is on. Thank you everyone for being good sports about that. So that's my quick live feedback round. So again, doesn't need to be anything fancy. Like you can just make adjustments as needed. Again, grab books, just grab whatever's around the house to kind of get your setup up and running. So with that, I want to enter our first recap. So we just talked about adjusting our lighting, curating our environment, and then making sure that we have the right framing. So next up, I want to talk about 3 ways that we can create engaging virtual content. So like I showed earlier, many of us continue to see presentations where the presenter is screen sharing, they're sitting on the slide for 10 minutes. I mean, we feel like this. Sometimes we feel like this. Really, we should be feeling like this, right? So how do we make sure that we are standing out and our audience is not tuning out? Well, one way we can do that is with the Think, Do, Feel matrix. Now, the Think, Do matrix was created by someone named Andrew Abella. He was an author and a professor. Now, what this matrix does is it helps you understand your audience better. A lot of you mentioned in the chat wanting to know how to engage your audience. So this is going to be really critical. Now, if you don't understand your audience, creating a presentation is pointless, right? So what this matrix does is it helps you map out how your audience currently thinks and what they're currently doing. And then it helps you decide, okay, now I know that the now, how do I want these things to change after they see my presentation? The Think Do matrix has been modified by my former colleague Spencer Waldron to become the Think Do Feel matrix because emotion is going to be a critical piece in connecting with your teammates, your clients, and really persuading them to make change or to take an action especially in a virtual space, right? That's really hard. So it's important to really think through these key factors. Now, these days, I know we're all so busy, right? It's really hard to remember to customize or make things specific based on who we're speaking to. But if you can fill this out, it really does go a long way in differentiating your content and showing that you came prepared, and really impresses, I think, senior leaders when you can do this well. If you don't have the answers, now's a great time to ask, right? So talk to your manager, cross-functional stakeholders, so you can figure out what exactly goes into all these boxes. Now, here's an example of what one looked like for me for this keynote. So video meetings are necessary evils. That's what people currently think. Afterwards, I would want them to think, okay, meetings don't have to be boring. Currently, what do people do? I sit down and I screen share. Afterwards, I would want them to use hand gestures and unique visuals. They currently feel that they are nervous to be on camera. And afterwards, I would want them to feel excited to show their presentations and to be on video. So I want us to do one together on a topic that's very timely in the news. So I'm going to add this into the chat right now. So imagine you're the head of employee engagement at your firm and lead a lot of the culture initiatives. You've learned through a survey that your employees are happiest with a remote first model and don't really want to come back to the office full time, even though the C-suite is asking everyone to come back full time. You need to come up with a presentation that will convince the C-suite to provide a more flexible working model. I'm going to type this into the chat. So I'll give you all 30 seconds to read it, and then we're going to fill this out together. All right, so we're going to get started. So we're presenting to our C-suite. What does the C-suite currently think? They think that return to office is necessary. So after your presentation with the description I just gave you, what might you want them to think afterwards? So there's no like perfect right answer for this. You'll all have your own interpretations, but what would you want the C-suite to think after your presentation based on the goals that you're trying to achieve? You can add that in the chat. Linda, flexible work from home model can be successful. Yep. Thomas, that engagement will be higher with a more flexible model. Both perfect. Jancy, that a remote model is successful. Yep, 3 or 4 or 5 days is okay, Lorna. Yeah, a lot of you talking about the flexibility. Perfect. So afterwards, this is just the one that I came up with, that employees should decide when to come in. Like they are responsible enough to do that. So next, what is the C-suite currently doing? Let's say, for example, they are requiring a check-in system to track employees, who's in the office. What might they start doing after they see your presentation? Empower managers to set the tone for coming in or working remotely. Yep. Great, Becky. Thank you. Yeah, Kimberly, more autonomy. Dave, trust that employees will complete work regardless of their location. Yep, trust-based environment. Yeah, these are all excellent. So my response was implement an honor system and add trust as a company value. So again, this is all just our own make-believe world, but that's what I would hope for the C-suite to think. All right, so last one. What do they currently feel? C-suite is uptight about productivity. How do we want them to feel after they see our presentation? Confident, Elizabeth, that productivity will increase. Yep. Yeah. We want them to just feel like this is going to be a plan that works, essentially, right? Yeah, confident, a lot of confidence here. Yeah, in the chat. Yeah, excellent. So yeah, this one, I want them to feel excited about the new systems that we're proposing, and it's going to increase productivity. So that was just a quick example, right? Very simple, but you can use this model for whatever the topic is that you're presenting and call out some of these behaviors and make sure that, we want to think through all of these different things for our specific audience to really make the most impact. So next, I want to talk about the impact of movement in our virtual presentation. So this is kind of like the thinking ahead of what will be in the content. Movement is something that we need to think of in the actual content itself. So adding movements is going to spike your viewers' attention by boosting dopamine in the brain. Now, while I can't promise that your next video or presentation will be as exciting as a car chase, we can definitely get closer to it. So I want to take a moment for us to really confirm our hypothesis about the impact of movement. So let me know in the chat, for the last 15 seconds or so while I was talking, what were you looking at? Were you looking at me? Were you looking at the video of the car chase? Or were you looking at the picture of the car chase? Which ones were your eyes drawn to? I won't be offended if it wasn't me. Yeah, Elizabeth, video. Okay, car chase. Yep, everyone's saying video so far. Okay, Belinda looked at me too. Thank you, Belinda. All right, most of you are saying video. So, I mean, you're seeing firsthand just how powerful movement can be in drawing attention. So interesting, this attention towards movement is biological. So in our hunter-gatherer days, stationary things didn't threaten us. It was the moving predators or prey that caught our eye. So these days, we're used to seeing a lot of movement on screens, whether it be on the big screen or through video apps like TikTok. So we want our presentations to sort of mimic that as much as we can, because that's what people are expecting when they get on video. So I like to recommend at least 2 slides or movements per minute in a virtual setting. And these don't have to be really big movements. They can be showing a video. They can simply be changing a slide, right? You can also even do maybe more fun, eye-catching moments, something like this to keep your audience engaged, right? So this is, I mean, I doubt any of you were expecting this. So creative movements like this also have that added benefit of adding novelty. Our brains love novelty. So anytime you can add that, it's great. It makes us pay closer attention. Like, oh, what's going to happen next? So movement is really critical to our content. Next, I want to talk about state changes. And to kick us off, I want to share a video of a marketer, Wes Cow, who talks about state changes, which are also called pattern interrupts.
Meeting there, it was really hard to stay focused, listening to someone monologue for an hour and a half. So the staging method is a framework that I created that is the antidote to a monologue. So in a monologue, one person speaks forever. On the other hand, with the state change method, every 3 to 5 minutes, you are adding a state change that jolts your audience awake by offering a change in the rhythm, a change in the pacing. That might be asking a question to the audience and having them put in their answer in the Zoom or unmute. It might be switching speakers. It might be going into a breakout room or doing a guide exercise. Those are all examples of state changes. And it's a really great way when you are hosting a meeting to help keep your audience engaged.
All right, so why are state changes so important? Wes talked a lot about it. So it's a theme we continue to touch on, right? Attention spans are limited, especially on video. If we want to keep giving our audience's brains boosts of dopamine to get them interested, paying attention, we need to keep changing things up. So there are many different state changes you can incorporate when you're presenting or you're in a meeting. Wes named a few. So I'm going to share a few more here for inspiration. Breakouts or group discussions are state changes. Switching from screen share to gallery view, that's a state change. Maybe asking the audience to reflect on a question. I've been doing that a lot. That's a state change. Even having someone else speak. So we saw Tara and Angie switching at the beginning for the introduction. That was a state change. Entering Q&A, or for example, launching a poll or playing a video. So let me know in the chat, which is your favorite state change? Which one might you commit to trying when it comes to leading your next meeting or getting on another call? Which one resonates with you? Which one are you excited to try? Thomas wants to ask questions. Yeah, that's a great one too, just to get people participating as well. You saw I asked questions right at the start. That's also setting the tone, like, okay, I'm going to want you all to be engaging with me throughout. Yeah, asking questions. Dave launching a poll is great too. It's a low lift way to get people engaged, and it gets a lot of usually people responding. Yeah, Charles, chat feedback, a lot of asking questions. Joanne launching a poll. Grace asking the audience to reflect on a question. Yeah, you can. That's a great one too. You don't need to actually have them put anything in the chat. You can just ask them to reflect. That works just as well. Yeah, nice. Speaker change. Okay, great. These are all excellent. Well, time for another recap. To keep your audience engaged with your content, you want to use the Think, Do, Feel matrix, keep adding movements, and incorporate state changes. So now you all have your new tips for gaining confidence and engaging your audience. You're all well on your way to shining on the virtual stage. So we're going to switch gears now to our last section, talking about best practice for you to really connect over video, whether you are on a catch-up call with a colleague or presenting virtually. So in this section, I'm going to be sharing 3 tips around how to better connect with the person on the other side of the camera. So we're going to cover eye contact, smiling, and body language. And the first one, eye contact here, it's going to be really important to make your audience feel like you're connecting with them. But speaking from personal experience, it is a little bit more difficult to do. It takes a little bit more practice. So you should always aim to be looking at the camera or right below it. So we talked about framing before and figuring out our setup. So once you have your framing right, then we can figure out, okay, where should we be looking exactly based on where the camera is. But eye contact is hard to do because it's human nature. We want to look at ourselves, right, to make sure we look okay, or we want to see, like, oh, Angie said something funny. Like, how do I look laughing? But as best as you can, fight the urge, and turning off self-view is an amazing way to do this. And I know it's a little bit awkward at first. You're like, oh, where am I on video? But it does help a lot with video fatigue. So I just want to call that out as a very helpful tip. Now, I also see a lot of presentations still, and even video calls, where people are looking off like this. I think their camera is here, and then maybe their monitor is here right in front of them, right? So it's easier for them to see. So they're looking over here, they're talking to me. I know they're talking to me, but also it kind of seems like they're not talking to me. So if I were to be just giving the talk like this, right, the whole time, you'd kind of be like, what is Lorraine looking at? And it's a lot harder for you to stay focused when I'm looking over here than if I'm looking right, or giving the illusion at least I'm looking straight at you. So that's just really impactful when it comes to eye contact. It makes me look like I'm looking at you. And eye contact in person releases something called oxytocin, which is a social bonding hormone. So just virtually, this eye contact is really one of the best ways that we can also release that oxytocin. So it's a little bit of a hack, right? We're not actually looking directly at the person, but you are looking at the camera right below it, and the other person feels like you are. So it has that impact on them, that they feel more bonded to you and more connected. Now, the next tip for connecting with your audience is to simply smile. So smiling is one of those things that presenters often forget to do, and also even just on video calls, but it really does have such an impact on how your audience connects with you. So I really want us to be conscientious about what expression we're giving off when we're on video. Now imagine if I kind of talk like this the whole time. I'm like sort of monotone. I'm not showing any expression. I'm just going through the content, just kind of talking like this, which is what we see on a lot of meetings these days, right? I don't know what it is about video, but we're all just a lot more relaxed. And not only that, but there's an additional barrier of the video screen to get through, right? So you see me like nothing big with my energy, but it has to be like that for you to really feel it a little bit more. However, when we choose to smile, it does, smiling is contagious. It gives off a different energy. And when we smile, the people on the other side of the camera are more likely to feel positive too. It also makes them more excited about what we're talking about, encourages them to feel the same. When I smile, my voice is lighter and just like sounds different. So that's another thing as well, another benefit when it comes to presenting and video communications. Now, again, this takes some practice too, especially when you get nervous on camera. Like I used to be so nervous giving my keynote talks, and I wasn't smiling very much. And I still remember the first time I did smile a lot, and I actually got feedback in the chat with someone saying how much they liked how happy I seemed and how much I was smiling. So people do notice these things. So I want you to all just to remember thinking about your face, your smile, and that energy that you're giving off. Now, last but not least, we have body language. And in particular today, I want to talk about hand gestures. So research has shown that movements like open palms, mirroring the other person's body language, it actually makes you feel like I'm warmer, I'm more trustworthy, like you just have a lot a much better impression of me, much more positive impression of me, which is very cool. So here's a video by Vanessa Van Edwards. I mentioned her earlier when I was talking about the amygdala with the framing. So she does a great job using hand gestures herself, and her team did this really interesting analysis of popular TED Talks by views. And they found that the most viral videos had speakers who used an average of 465 hand gestures. The least popular TED Talks used 272, so 465 versus 272, so nearly 50% fewer hand gestures. I think that data clearly shows how important hand gestures are in conveying energy and emphasizing key points or messages. But again, similar to the eye contact, not always the most natural thing when we're on video, we're a little bit more relaxed, our hands are on our keyboard, on our mouse, right? So I recommend starting with simple ones. So I did this one a lot. I count things off, or I like indicate if I'm talking about 2 things, 3 things. If I'm talking about something small, I'll use the pinch gesture. If I'm talking about something big, I will do this, or if I'm excited, I kind of have like a bigger hand gesture here. And if all of that still feels weird, I know sometimes people joke about this, but like just waiting at the start and end of a call is a great thing. Again, you're showing your palm, you're showing your hands, so you're really helping to create that warmth, that trustworthiness. Now, one thing I want to remind you is we're not moving our hands for the sake of moving our hands, right? They're here to emphasize our points and our message, not detract from them. So when you do use them, make sure to move them higher up than feels natural so that they are captured in the video screen. I know people who do lots of hand gestures, like let's say they're like kind of like this on video, and they're doing this and that, but like I can't see what's going on. So you have to really lift your hands a little bit higher than feels natural. So with that, we have covered connecting over video. So we talked about eye contact, smiling, and our hand gestures. And we've covered everything now. So to recap, we've talked about how to boost our confidence and competence and the need to focus on our lighting, environment, and our framing. We talked about how to keep our audience engaged with our content using the think, do, feel matrix, movement, and state changes. And then we talked about how to connect over video using eye contact, smiling, and our hand gestures. Now, I think all of us can agree video is definitely here to stay. So I would love to hear from you all in the chat. Which 1 or 2 or more tips do you plan on trying in your next video call? Which one got you the most excited? Which one do you think is most realistic for you to try after this call? Let me know in the chat. Yeah, Lorna mentioned it's hard to look at the camera versus the person you're speaking to. Yeah, it does take some practice for sure. Charles has been using open palms at the end of call as friendly gesture to attendees. Love that. All right, so let's see here. Lorna, more hand gestures. Thomas, hands and smiling. Charles, more eye contact. Tara, increasing hand gestures. Yeah, okay, it looks like majority right now is saying eye contact and hand gestures. Actually, all of you. Oh, hands and smiling from Thomas. Nice. Belinda's going to work on camera positioning. Both Angie and Elizabeth are going to turn off that self view. And Elizabeth will also work on your background. Love to hear it. Anyone else? Yeah, Tara, turn the camera on, especially when making decisions. Yeah, that's a great one. And again, I know there's reasons why cameras need to be off sometimes, but you want people to see you and to get familiar with your face. And we connect with people, not chat boxes, right? So when you can turn your camera on, that's the ideal. All right, excellent. Jancy's going to work on background and lighting. Love it. All right, seems like kind of spread across. Maybe the first and third section maybe were the most useful to all of these. That's great. So I want to thank you all for being so engaged in the chat. Before we dive into the Q&A, I would also like to ask you all for your feedback. It goes a really long way in helping me know what was most helpful for you, what I might be able to improve on in the future. And if you have teams or organizations that you're involved with who might be interested in collaborating with me as a speaker, I would love to get in touch. So you can add all of that there. And then there is a gift waiting at the end of this thank you feedback form. It should only take you like 30 seconds to fill out. So for those who take the time, you'll have an extra resource at the end there to help you with your video. And with that, I'll pull this up again in a second, but want to remind you all, Angie sent these links, but you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to say hello there and follow your video and presentation journey. You can subscribe to my newsletter, which Angie mentioned, and Tara, I found out today, is already subscribed, which is wonderful. So bite-sized tips to supercharge your career in 3 minutes or less, and it is free. So I encourage you all to sign up there. And then we talk about my LinkedIn Learning courses. I have 14 out, one more coming this year. Most of them are nano courses, so 10 minutes or less. I talk about a lot of career leadership and management topics, including there's a talk on virtual presentation. So if you need a recap, there's definitely some tips that we talked about today that you can get refreshed on very quickly. And with that, I'll go back to the feedback form here. And I think we can enter Q&A now.
There's got to be some questions out there. Let's get them rolling in.
It's always so much information. Just like let people just digest a little bit. Yeah.
So what was kind of your first occasion where you really said, you know what, I want to take this on, I want to own it?
I think so I started really learning more about video in early 2021. And so I do, I'm a speaker and trainer now, but 2021 is when I really started. So working at Prezi, which is a presentation company, we had to come up with personal goals for ourselves. And I thought, oh, like my personal goal should be public speaking and presenting. It aligns very well to the company's goals. So that's what I did. And I had a mentor at the company. I mentioned Spencer when I was talking about the Think, Do, Feel matrix. And Spencer was so kind and offered to mentor me and give me feedback. And he's, an excellent presenter as well. And that's how it got started. It was just like me learning on my own, observing people. While I was at Prezi, I worked with a lot of keynote speakers. So I learned from them as well, like what to do, what not to do. And so a lot of them were very kind to mentor me as well. And it just grew from there. And then it became my career, which is crazy. You don't always, I wouldn't have accepted this for myself, but yeah, video is a big thing that I talk about, video and virtual communications generally.
Fantastic. How did you get then into teaching at Stanford?
That was, so I was brought on to do a recorded speaking engagement for Atlassian, which is a tech company. Atlassian has a flagship conference called Team, and they have a speaker coach for it. And his name is Matt Abrahams, and he's a lecturer at Stanford GSB. And I actually spoke twice, 2 years in a row, and Matt was a speaker coach for both. And yeah, we just got along. He didn't have too many changes for me, and then we just caught up. So I actually got laid off in November 2022, and so that's when I decided to do my speaking side hustle as a full-time business. And so we caught up, and he had mentioned, oh, like Stanford doesn't have a course on virtual and video communications. I feel like this would be a perfect thing for you to do. So he actually gave me the idea and was helpful in just sending them a nice note on my behalf. And I think it might be offered later this fall, TBD on that, but I will likely be launching a separate public speaking course with them in the summer. So if any of you are interested, again, send me a note, connect with me on LinkedIn. I can keep you updated on all of that.
Very cool. I'll pop, for everybody that's on the call, I'll just pop all of these links in the chat one more time. Yeah, if you have some more questions.
I have a question. Can I ask a question,
Yeah.
Angie?
Yeah.
So do you have some suggestions when it's a room full of people and there's maybe only 1 or 2 people who are remote? Because I don't personally like to be like the giant face in the room. So I tend to turn the camera off in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Is it like on a really big screen in the room?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I know it might feel kind of awkward for you to be like that, but I don't think that's a bad thing, especially when there's so few of you remote. You kind of want to make your presence known, right? Because proximity bias, it's so easy to just default to, okay, I'm gonna pay attention to whoever's right in front of me. So I kind of like actually that you're a little bit larger than life. Like you're like, I am here, don't forget about me. So yeah, I would actually just keep your camera on if you can, or at least if you want it turned off while other people are talking, turn it back on if you have something to say. And
Okay.
at the beginning, at the end, to say hi to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Tommy Johns had a question. What are your tips for presenting difficult topics virtually, i.e. delivering bad news?
I would say, so this is like asking about how to prepare to deliver bad news virtually before you actually do it. Okay. So it's hard. I would say like the rules that apply to how you would do it in person still like cross over a lot to the virtual space. So you want to be direct about it. But I think like a lot of the tips I talked about today would be really important, right? Like the eye contact. You want them to feel like you're looking at them versus like I'm over here. You're like, who are you talking to? Like, right? So you want to like make eye contact with them. Um, you want to be empathetic. You want to maybe, I don't know, like depending on the situation, maybe like prepare them ahead of time, or if there's certain things you want to discuss, like give them time to think it over. Like if they're introverted, maybe that would be helpful for them, or maybe give them time afterwards before responding. So I actually wouldn't say virtually there's so many differences, but I think like having that like great presence, making sure that you are not in like a crowded, loud place, that you just look, presentable, you are like respecting them and their time, and just making sure there aren't distractions. It's harder virtually to kind of get rid of those distractions, but if you can do that, then I think those are all important things to think about.
Virtual silence. Talk about that.
So virtual silence, I know can be a little bit awkward and uncomfortable, but it's going to happen. I think it's an important thing. I have a separate talk where I talk about like leading better meetings, right? And I say anytime you ask a question, you want to pause for at least 5 seconds. And at least because in American culture, people start getting uncomfortable at 4 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
So at 5 seconds is when usually someone speaks up. For virtually, there's just so many considerations, right? It's like, oh, I don't like, do I say something? Or is like Angie about to say something? Like, let me wait. And then Angie, you're like thinking the same thing. So we're both waiting. And it's just, so there's just additional things like that. With introverts as well. Like I'm an introvert, so I keep talking about introversion, but like to have to figure out the right moment to jump in is very hard. And so I think embracing the silences and also make it very clear that there are other alternatives to not just speaking up, right? And unmuting and muting, just jumping in, but like, okay, let's have some rules of engagement. Like if you want to speak up, like raise your virtual hand, or the chat is open. And I really encourage you all to use the chat as well. And then the silence, to just understand, like something I like to do, and I was gonna do it if you all weren't as engaged as you were, was okay, I'm gonna ask you a question, I'm gonna wait a minute or 30 seconds. And if no one has anything to say, that's fine, I'll move on. But you want to give people that space to process and to think, because again, like so much content coming in, and with introverts as well, you need more time to think and process, and just video as well. I think it's a little bit harder, right, to kind of process and just figure out, what you want to say, and you want to say it well, than in person, where it might feel a little bit more natural. So I say embrace the silence. You will get used to it eventually.
Awesome. What other questions are out there? Anybody else have any other questions? We have an expert on the line. You guys take advantage. Any other questions? Feel free to shout them out or write them in the chat.
I just double on the silence question. Do you feel it's more beneficial to give a little bit longer virtually than you would in person? Because I know I have worked with someone in the past who has interrupted in the past, and she's like, we're just going to wait until someone answers. It's very easy for me to continue talking, but then you end up being the only one talking, right?
Yeah, I think virtually it's nice. Personally, just again, like from like an introvert's perspective, everything takes like a little bit longer virtually. And then there's also those extra awkward considerations. So the 5 second rule for sure virtually. In person, you might just be able to kind of gauge people's like body language and just like eye contact and things like that, to kind of know right away, like, okay, people don't have any questions. But virtually, you have to kind of give it that little extra breathing room.
Thanks.
Good. Oh, this is a good one. Someone wrote in the chat, I invite a friend to watch my presentation for practice. Any other suggestions? Great question.
Yeah, that's a great thing to practice. Your friend, your manager. I really like practicing in front of my manager, or in the past, my manager, because the manager is, more tuned into the content and can be like, oh, I feel like based on knowing who the audience is, they might ask this, or they will definitely want to hear about this, or they don't care so much about this. So friend is great, definitely like kind of puts you in that presenter mode and having the audience, but you can also talk to your manager or present to your manager. I think that's also helpful. Recording yourself is really helpful. And I know, like, even me, who's been doing this for a few years, like, I always procrastinate, like, watching myself. Like, I'm gonna get the recording from Angie and I'm gonna be like, oh, gonna have to put it off for a few days. It's just so awkward, like, watching and hearing ourselves, but like it's really important to
Yeah.
like learn. And like one thing I remember like recording, I started like doing this, like talking to someone when I was nervous, like answering Q&A. So I caught that like on video, and someone else also pointed it out to me. So you kind of pick up on weird presentation tics you might have. And some other things you might want to do is, you know, after you record yourself, listen to it, close your eyes, hear like intonation in your voice, and whether you're like monotone, things like that. Then you might turn off the sound and just watch and see like, what does your face look like? Are you using your hands? Are you just kind of stiff like this? So all these different options for recording yourself back will go a long way in you helping to improve.
Yes, you always get the that eye roll when you say record yourself, but it truly is the best way to actually understand and to help uncover your blind spots.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Good. Any other questions?
All advice. That was great advice. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Yes. Well, thank you for joining the Women's Council today.
Thank you for
Such
having me.
a fun topic to talk about. For everyone on the call, we'll put the recording onto the Teams page alongside with all of the newsletter links, etc., so that you have those. But thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know you all shared your goals at the beginning, so I hope you feel more confident, more excited to tackle all of the things, right? Video communications, your virtual presentations, and keep me posted on LinkedIn. I would love to stay in touch and hear how things go, and hopefully come back for a future session. And thank you, Angie and Tara, and all of you for having me today.
Thank you. On behalf of the Women's Council, thank you so much. And thank you, Angie, for setting this up. It's a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Have a wonderful day, all.
All right. Bye.
Bye.